Hello and welcome to the Super Return 2021 Healthcare Track. I'm Charles Boorady, Managing Partner at Health Catalyst Capital. We were founded in 2015 to invest in healthcare information technology stocks globally. We're New York City based and evaluated over 1,300 healthcare IT investment opportunities over the last 5 years. Presently, we have 17 health IT investments across 2 funds or under exclusive LOI. And prior to forming Health Catalyst Capital, my career has been in healthcare investments since 1994 and in information technology dating back to 1986. Although one of every $4 in the world is spent on healthcare is spent here in the United States, many of those 1,300 investments we evaluated were from all over the world. Healthcare IT is truly a global opportunity, and that's reflected in this incredible lineup for today's panel. I'm very pleased to be joined by 3 panelists who bring expertise and a global perspective on healthcare IT, private equity investing, and venture capital investing. It's Shane Chesson, co-founder and partner at Openspace Ventures. He's with us from Singapore. Good evening, Shane. Alexander Frolov, general partner and CEO of Target Global, a UK-based fund, and Jean-Marc Patouillaud, the co-managing partner of Partech Partners, and he's with us from France. And I'd love to give each panelist the opportunity to introduce themselves, tell us about their experience and their perspectives on healthcare IT investments. And we have a short window to do that, but I'm sure we would all welcome connecting with you anytime one-on-one after this panel. And for the first question, I'd like to keep it introductory in nature. And I'll ask first Shane, then Alex, then Jean-Marc to please introduce yourself and your firm and share a little bit of history about what's attracted you and your firm to the healthcare information technology sector. Shane, I'd like to take it to you first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Shane here from Openspace Ventures. As Charles mentioned, we are a busy investor in health tech, but our first and primary purpose is to find the best possible companies based in Southeast Asia. So we've been around since 2014, and we're currently investing out of 4 funds. We are focused on tech investing generally and look towards Series A as our prime entry point, but we can do everything through the early stage through to the mid stage. We have investments across the range of Southeast Asian countries, and we have 25 people and 5 offices to help us cover that diverse region. And we feel like there is a lot of different subsectors that are really in need of increased effort from entrepreneurs, are in need of digitalization, and are solving fundamental problems. And so for Openspace, when we consider health, we see this as one of the biggest issues that we can help solve, working together with strong entrepreneurs. You know, it's a region that has 2 different theses when it comes to investing in health. The first one is that the Southeast Asian region has countries with very different levels of development. And in some of our biggest countries, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, access to healthcare is still a major issue. So if we can use the latest tools that are available to enable high quality health to be delivered to people who aren't getting proper access, the doctor to patient ratio is not in good shape. The hospital bed to patient ratio is not in good shape. So instead of waiting for that infrastructure to be built, we're helping to back technology companies that can help deliver high quality healthcare to those developing and large markets in Southeast Asia. An example of that is our investment in HelloDoc in Indonesia, which is the leading telemedicine e-pharma and also has a full payment function through insurance and e-wallets. The other thesis which we dive into at Openspace Ventures is companies that are typically founded in the hub of Singapore. Now, Singapore has some unique characteristics. It's kept its immigration policies very liberal. You know, we have a lot of investment and support from the government in terms of backing R&D. And good science can come out of Singapore and then can go global. And so another investment I would look forward to the chance to tell you more about is a business called Bioformus, which is a remote patient monitoring solution using analytics and their own version of a wearable as well as other wearables to diagnose people's conditions and to take advantage of the additional data and insights from that to facilitate home care and also more drug development. So it's those two theses that we invest in, and I'd be pleased to tell you more about those over time.
Thank you, Shane. Next, why don't we go to Alex. Alex, please introduce yourself and your firm and share with us the history on what's attracting your firm to the healthcare IT sector.
Thank you so much, Charles. Gentlemen, it's a really great pleasure to be here. Target Global, we are a European-focused venture firm doing venture investments, doing early growth, deploying about 300 to 400 million euros every year out of our family of funds, and really focusing on the handful of industries that traditionally have been very strong in Europe, and healthcare being one of them. And we believe that a lot of this can form a good basis for the companies of tomorrow to be founded. And really, we are having very deep coverage of Europe as a continent. You would see us working with the German ecosystem, with Spain, with Benelux, with other companies. And just to give you few examples, it's even hard to believe, for example, a company called Flow in our portfolio that is the largest women health product globally. 10% of all US women use it every month. And the company have started in Belarus, right, in Eastern Europe. Today it has London HQ and so on, but that is one example. The other one in our portfolio, Doc Planner, one of the two largest SMB software for the health industry globally, came from Poland, now in Spain, now leader of the LATAM market. So you would see a lot of these stories being picked up by us early, and that would require a lot of conviction. We think about ourselves as a very, let's say, conviction-driven, thesis-driven investor. And certainly in healthcare, developing the thesis, upfront, thinking through what we do or do not believe is, extremely important for that matter. In some cases, it even requires us being proactive and inspiring some of the founders to do stuff. We have been very happy last week. Our largest, investment, Auto One, got public in Frankfurt, have been the largest IPO in Germany in many years. And in fact, one of its, co-founders we have started, work with, before IPO, 2 years ago, on the health opportunity in Germany, like from scratch, being, the first investor. So we would not hesitate, doing, these things as well, a little bit, let's say, co-founding, things with entrepreneurs who want to partner up with us.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Very, very interesting, and thank you for being with us today. We're also very pleased and honored to have Jean-Marc Patouillaud. Jean-Marc, if we can turn to you in France and ask you to please introduce yourself, your firm, and share some history on what's attracting your organization to the healthcare IT sector right now.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I'm Jean-Marc. I'm one of the two managing partners of Partech. Partech is a strange animal. It was born over 30 years ago over the Atlantic. It's a kind of link between Silicon Valley and France. San Francisco and Paris are still, by the way, our largest offices. Also now we have expanded our investment, our portfolio to other continents like Southeast Asia, Japan and Korea. But I would say still that US and Europe are our core geography as far investments is concerned. Regarding healthcare and health IT, health tech, we have done now something like 35 investments. And that's, by the way, a very recent move at Partech. We started back in 2015, so more like a recent history. So 35 investments done in the space. And basically, it was not done randomly. To do that, we started from the kind of investment phases that through our investments, we would make sure that we will improve the quality of care delivered to patients. And not only that, we would also improve the quality of the patient journey his care, from hospitals to practitioner to post hospitalization. So to do that, we put the patient at the very center, the very core of that vast mapping of the health ecosystem, in between pharmas, practitioners, hospitals, healthcare, welfare. And we sort of kind of identified what would be the enabling technology to streamline, to better optimize that quality of care and that quality of relationship between the patient and these different stakeholders. And we invested in so many different areas covering that space. So that the main driver was probably AI-assisted care, from drug discovery to diagnosis, to pure digital health insurance, data and analytics, how to better leverage data and analytics to get the best of research in drug discovery. Obviously, telemedicine and telehealth, what I would call virtual medicine. And last but not least, since I was speaking about the quality of the patient journey, all enabling tools, administrative tools that make sure that the patient is not only a patient, but in some way a customer. And so that is treated that way, on top of being cured, obviously.
No, thank you very much, Jean-Marc. And why don't we stick with you, Jean-Marc, to lead us off with the second question, which is that healthcare has many complexities, and those include personal safety, privacy issues, regulatory issues, and in most countries, a third-party reimbursement question, either the government or an employer as the payer. And would love if you could share a couple of more examples of the challenges and the opportunities that are unique to healthcare information technology investing, and how you're navigating those as an investor.
Yeah, sure. Good point. I have two examples in mind, Charles. The first one is about privacy, because definitely privacy these days is experienced as both a constraint, for sure, for organizations, wherever they are, but it's also an opportunity. And let me explain you why. We invest in a company called Privitar, and what these guys are doing is basically make sure that all of the data that are processed, manipulated by science or a big health institution such as the NHS in the UK, a vast reservoir of knowledge. All this data is obviously protected because it relates to your privacy, to my privacy. But we made sure with Privitar that this data could be fully anonymized, fully protected, so it can be shared with other institutions, public or private, so that this vast reservoir data is a leverage to a better optimization, to a better improvement, I would say, of how to understand diseases, how to better treat diseases, and how to find better drugs or vaccines, by the way. So privacy is definitely one of the examples of where you might see the two sides of the coin. And the second example I have in mind is that you probably realize that these recent years, and especially during the pandemic, don't ask me why, a lot of health centers like hospitals have been the victim, the target of ransomware, where basically these IT were hacked, were assaulted by hackers and basically to extract money out of this big organization. And definitely, I mean, human lives were at stake. So we identify a company in Israel called Medigate that is basically protecting all of the medical devices and the networks within the hospitals from any external attacks or assault, so that they are somewhat protected from any pirates or ransomware assaulters.
Right. Terrific anecdotes. Thank you, Jean-Marc. Why don't we go back to Alex with the same question and his perspective from Target Global. Can you, share a couple examples of the challenges and the opportunities unique to healthcare information technology that you see as investors?
Absolutely, yeah. And I can relate a lot, to what Jean-Marc was saying, right? Coming from the perspective of, consumer B2C investor historically, it's really surprising, right? How, your NPS for the healthcare services is very low in many instances, while so much, money are getting spent, the end, user, patient is not getting, what they would expect to get. And really, I think for many of the companies we see, it relates to the topic of retention. If you look at it as the consumer product, right? Retaining the user, using the service regularly is a challenge. Perhaps first of all, it's not your most positive connotation. It's not as wonderful as watching your Netflix in the evening. But also, I think, especially for some of the mild, conditions, think, weight loss, if you are getting, good help, you are done, you are moving on. If you're not getting the good help, you are walking away. So really, having this interaction with a health product that's going to be, systematic, that's going to show very good, retention is a very, very big challenge. But now I think we all have, observed, obviously, many of the doctors who were not, available for the telehealth, now for it. Some of the patients, the older groups of people trying it for the first time and being, open to digital health. And that I think is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to change. And of course, I think, AI, technology could be used in multiple places in the ecosystem. But personally, I'm perhaps the most excited by the possible shift from reactive healthcare to preventative to proactive healthcare. I think that's really the opportunity of our generation, and that of course is based very much on the data that is available, on patients, the data that they are willing to share about themselves, all sorts of new data that becomes available, very often self-reported data, and first of all, building algorithms based on that that's going to be preventative is important. But second, of course, handling this data correctly and appropriately is a very big challenge. And I think very often it's not that there is lack of willingness, right? For the startup to do things right, but it's just so ambiguous, unclear sometimes what is the right thing. And on the one hand, I see an opportunity for the smaller companies, for the startups to nail that, because clearly they are getting less scrutiny than your Apple Health, who I think is best positioned to solve this challenge of the generation, but because of all the reasons, is not as effective. And secondly, I think the startups that do create the ecosystem of data, sometimes with several products leveraging on that, I think are creating a wonderful entry barrier before the data is so homogeneous, easily accepted, assessed by anyone, right, who wants it. Before it is all there, clearly regulated with your API. I think it's a great opportunity for the companies who are one step ahead to benefit from that. So really, I think these are some of the key things that I'm excited about, and from the companies we back. Maybe I would mention this woman product called Flow that is fascinating with 40 million women globally self-reporting via healthcare data, and also all, sorts of other data, from the devices getting collected. In fact, it's, maybe the company number 3 in the world right now after Apple and Google in terms of the amount of user kind of generated data that is there. And as many others, they are working on some of the algorithms that can make, the health of a woman, in the preventative mode, defended and improved.
Great. Well, thank you, Alex. Alex and, Jean-Marc, a perspective from some of the most heavily regulated markets in the world and most developed markets in the world. And I'm eager to hear from Shane, who was talking about how liberal some of the employment and other regulations are in Singapore and throughout Asia, and why that's supported having multiple people in multiple offices, throughout Asia. Although it's in the Far East, here in the United States, we refer to developing markets like that as the Wild West of less regulation, almost an anything goes as it relates in some markets to the opportunities, and where some of the largest telehealth companies are based. It's real pioneers like in China and throughout on the adoption of telehealth. So, Shane, can you talk to us about privacy, safety, regulations, third-party reimbursement, and other examples of challenges and opportunities unique to healthcare information technology, and how you see them as an investor in the space?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Indeed, some parts of Southeast Asia may feel like the wild, wild west. But we do have other markets, like I mentioned, Singapore, which are actually strongly regulated and provide a certain hub to what we're doing. And so I would explain maybe there's 2 different types of complexities and issues associated with investing in health in our region. One is, I would say, that the patient is often ahead of the politician, right? So what patients care about is access to quality health, right? They want to be able to get it at a reasonable price. They want to make sure that the diagnosis and the treatment is relatively correct. They want to get better. Politicians often are working with relatively archaic regulatory systems, and often there can be entrenched interests in terms of maintaining the status quo. And so for a health tech investor in a market like Indonesia or in other places, you're often having to wade into a gray zone when it comes to regulations. But our feeling is that a gray zone is not a black zone, and the best way is to work out, number one, is this something that the patient will value? Is this something that is safe and that will deliver quality health outcomes over time? And then make sure you back an entrepreneur and a founding group that has the right access, that has the relationships and the trust of some of those regulators, and it often comes all the way up to the politicians as well, in terms of making sure that the regulations react to the realities on the ground and what the customer is looking for. And so if you can make sure that you're delivering the quality product, if you can keep the communication channels open with the people that can start to fill in some of the gaps in these regulations, and you can build support in the people that matter at the end of the day in some of these markets, then you're going to be able to fill in the gaps when it comes to, addressing that risk. For example, our company HelloDoc, which had to work in an environment where it was tricky to be able to navigate the rules around offering a prescription online. So they had a telemedicine product, they had an e-pharmacy product, but the key is really to link those two so that you could make sure that the customer experience was smooth. Of course, that had not been regulated yet, but the explanation, the data, the safety and everything else was proven, and now the regulations allow that. And our company has managed to get the leading position in that space, which the consumers really value. So that's one thing we have to deal with in our market. The other thing which some of my fellow panelists touched upon was proving up to the payers that this is worth doing, right? And I think that means you can't just prove that you're getting access and you're helping solve a health issue. At the end of the day, you need to show that it's a cheaper way to pay for this, whether it's the employer or the insurer or the government health service. You need to make sure that you've got economic underpinning as well as scientific underpinning. So in the spirit of something being ahead of the other thing, you would say the science sometimes has been ahead of the cash flow generations or the simulations. And so we've always made sure that as soon as we have new innovation, we show the quality outcomes on the health side. We're also showing on the bottom line basis how much you can save people's budgets. And sometimes that can get skipped over in some environments, and I think that has slowed down adoption in some cases, but we make sure it's very much a parallel track for some of our companies. And Bioformis, which I mentioned before on the remote patient monitoring side, is similar. They can go into a hospital system and say, we can help you to deliver outcomes to patients after they've checked out. We can also build an environment through analytics and wearables and the right advice being given to the clinicians that 300 patients can get served by one nurse. And if you can start to think about the reach that you can achieve through a solution like that, you'll get your quick approvals and you can start to deliver upon the outcomes that you're looking for the patients.
Terrific. Well, all three of you describing really terrific examples of some of the challenges, how companies you're investing in are overcoming them, or in some cases taking advantage by finding solutions to them and growing new markets. And it certainly feels like it's early days and the best years remain ahead. But there's a tremendous amount of interest in this space right now. And a very brief question, given the limited time we have left in this panel, I would just like to ask each of you, what could go wrong? And maybe stick with you first, Shane. What could go wrong?
It is an exciting sector. We love looking at all the different ideas which are flowing in, and we look forward to backing more. I do think there is a risk that it gets treated like any other consumer tech sector, and that can mean that valuations go up, a lot of competition comes in, and in certain stages of the cycle, people can chase vanity metrics, number of consults, number of patients, without thinking about the quality, which is so important in health. So is there a risk of excessive capital, excessive valuation, and a lack of focus on what I think we all care about, which is quality outcomes? So we'll do our best to try and screen our companies and manage the market with our entrepreneurs to try and avoid that.
We go to Alex next. Same question.
Personally, I'm worried about Theranos, situations. As an investor in the blood, related business in the UK, maybe, there are many associations. I think, generally in some of the deal-making environment where, in a week, whatever, 100 million checks are getting written, and if it's based on belief in the technology, either, software one or the hardware one in the health, system that's supposed to be working, but we don't really diligence that, I think it certainly may go wrong. That's why I'm very privileged for the earlier position of the early investor where we are in, where we still have, more time to engage with entrepreneur and to be really, really careful.
Right. Jean-Marc, do you agree the best years are ahead, and what can go wrong?
I would say that the pandemic has been a fantastic revelator of the situations of our health care systems and the bottlenecks especially in the hospitals, and the relationship between hospitals and the rest of the practitioners. So definitely it is somewhat strengthening, accelerating the need for digital adjustment or digital transformation of all these stakeholders. The threat, because you're asking the question, Charles, the threat is what we're experiencing these days, where hospitals are so overwhelmed, especially in intensive care centers, units, with people in disarray, in severe conditions, that actually this is somewhat slowing down not the will, but the capacity to make these changes. So hopefully the virus will not be there forever, and hopefully there won't be too many variants coming from too many geographies. But it's also something that is at the same time accelerating the need for digital transformation, but also something that is somewhat dampening or slowing down that effort.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. The pandemic really has been global challenge, and healthcare information technology is adoption has been accelerated in telehealth and in certain areas, but it's important not to forget where there's been an inhibition of adoption because of the focus on treating these urgent cases. Well, I want to thank you, Jean-Marc, Shane, Alex, for being on the panel today. Very pleased to hear your views on healthcare information technology, the rapid adoption, the global nature of it, how you're pursuing opportunities and navigating the challenges inherent in the space. And I want to thank our hosts at Super Return for bringing us together today. Again, I'm Charles Boorady with Health Catalyst Capital. And on behalf of the four of us, we would all be pleased to connect with you individually around this event or afterwards. And thanks again for listening.